flying prices to the moon. The bears them waiting for the crash coming real soon. But the OG consultant watching, he's seen it all before. Over 40 years in the game, he knows the real score. Bull versus bear, a real estate fight. He doesn't tell you who's wrong and who is right. In the Miami Condo Investing Club, we don't guess. He cuts through the noise and all of the mess. The Peter Zalewski Show. Big respect, OG in the game. Listen and learn the man's name. And up down. Peter Zalewski Show.
Welcome to the Peter Zalewski Show. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. This Peter Zalewski Show, every Wednesday, 4 o'clock Miami time. We talk to business leaders from around the South Florida area, trying to give you some sense as to what's going on in the Tri-County. But for this episode, we're actually going to get into Monroe County, which is just south. That's where the Florida Keys are. But the idea is to help you understand and get a feel for what the community is actually comprised of down here in South Florida. Some of you might be thinking about moving here. Some of you already live here. Maybe some of you are new arrivals and you try to get your sense about it. So with this business show, I'm going to be talking to business leaders, talk about some of the ins and outs, how to sort of adapt and acclimate to what is this tremendous place called South Florida. Who do I have on this week? I have a gentleman who's a former journalist. He has his own communications company right now. And more importantly, he's moved to Key West. He's been there over a year. So he's going to walk us through the process. If any of you have ever thought about, hey, maybe I should just give it all up and let me move to Key West. Let me become a digital nomad. Let me do any of that type of stuff. We got just the guy to sort of lay it all out. And we're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about what's going on in real estate. We're going to talk about what's going on in tourism. Tourism is a big deal down here in South Florida, and especially down in Monroe County where the Florida Keys are, and primarily in Key West. So that's a long way of saying John Gruss of Gruss Communications. You can get him, and he's very modern. You can get him on X. His handle is at Jean Gruss, JeanGruss. What's going on, Mr. Key West?
Hey, great to be back on the show with Peter Zalewski. I know we did the real estate podcast for a long time in Miami, and it's great to be back with you.
Yeah, John, we had a run. We were doing the Miami Reporters Roundtable. We'd bring in reporters. We talk about some of the stories that are out there. And John, listen, I got to give you kudos. Back in the day when we were doing those podcasts, we were warning everybody about the real estate market, where it was headed. We were telling them, listen, and what you kept saying is, listen, you got an opportunity to get out now. Get out now, take the cash, sit on the sidelines. Many people, including some of our colleagues on the podcast, whether it be John Fackler or maybe be Donna Quinn, they were like, no. 1,000 people a day are coming to Florida. We're the gateway to Latin America. Prices never go down. John, it's a little bit different story today.
That's right, Peter, because you and I mean, we've been around the block in Florida. I've been a journalist. I was a journalist for 25 years in Florida, all over the States, and then another 10 years with my communications firm, and 6 of those in Miami. And so you and I have been through many cycles in Florida. In fact, I was just thinking about it today. When I moved to Florida, they were just cleaning up the RTC mess in Florida, and from the savings and loan debacle in the late 80s. And I just remember what that was like, and the commercial real estate landscape had completely cratered. And then, of course, we went through the Great Recession, where residential got hit really hard. And so we've seen this movie before. It's the story of Florida, boom and bust. And I think, we can almost forecast it. In fact, I think you and I were talking the other day that, we started seeing cracks in 2019, just before COVID. We started seeing the market really soften in Miami, particularly the condo market. And, I think at the time I thought that, we were really headed for a rough time in the Miami condo market. And then that got interrupted by COVID, basically. And this flood of free money just swamped the market, and everybody moved down here in COVID. And I think that delayed the the inevitable, which we're starting to see now. I think you're documenting that very well in your condo stats.
Well, thank you, Jean. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Jean, in terms of street cred, I'm impressed. But can you kind of lay it out for the audience in terms of some of the different publications you work for, some of the positions, and more importantly, your understanding about the economy as well as the real estate world, especially the state of Florida? I mean, you lived on both coasts, and now you're all the way down. You can't go farther south in the state of Florida driving with a car than Key West. So can you kind of lay it out to people, just generally speaking, your journalism background?
Yeah, so I worked all over the state. I started out actually in the Panhandle in Panama City, spring break capital of the world, and I worked up there for a few years. I started out like many reporters do, covering police and courts, and so that I call that sort of reporter boot camp. And then I got tired of covering cops courts pretty quickly, the mayhem. And got into business writing and ended up at the Tampa Tribune as a business writer for some time. And I covered commercial real estate. That was my beat: commercial real estate and economic development. And it was right at the time that the essentially the end of the RTC days, and commercial real estate was really making a comeback, and companies were relocating to the Tampa Bay region and relocating to Florida for many reasons. And it was a good time to be covering commercial real estate. And then I ended up working for a few years in Washington for Kiplinger, the personal finance publications, a little detour out of Florida, but came back to work for the Business Observer, which is a weekly business newspaper based in the Tampa Bay region. But I was the editor for Lee and Collier, which is Fort Myers and Naples, and did that for quite a long time, a dozen years. And then that ended my 25-year career in newspapers. And I started my own PR and communications company, helping entrepreneurs in about 10 years ago. And then but 6 years ago, I moved to Miami because it's such an entrepreneurial city, and I needed a change of pace. And I think you and I had talked when I was still a reporter at the Business Observer. I covered a number of condo developers, notably WCI Communities. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Yes.
And WCI at the time was publicly traded, and so you got to see all the innards and what was happening with WCI, and I think you and I talked several times about what they were doing over, I think, in Bal Harbor, and basically they did a face plant,
big time.
Yeah, so filed for bankruptcy. It was a bit of a disaster. So I think that's when you and I really started talking about the market and everything. And then when I moved to Miami, I think we sort of reconnected. I've been on your walking tours of Brickell, which are always fascinating, bewildering and fascinating. And I've always had an interest in real estate, of course, because some of my clients are in construction and real estate and finance. And of course, real estate is the business of Florida. No matter how you cut it, even tourism leads to real estate. I mean, that's kind of how you get people to buy real estate down here. So real estate has always been a part of my life in Florida. And, with the improvements in technology and my ability to really work from anywhere, and I have a passion for scuba diving. So I found myself when I was in Miami practically every weekend diving in the Keys. And so I decided to just move down here. I'm able to work with clients all over South Florida remotely. No one really cares where I am. And I sort of explain the Keys. Everybody thinks, well, you're moving to Key West and you're gonna end up drunk on Duval Street, every night. But
that's what Jimmy Buffett taught us. That's what he trains everybody about.
But actually, what's really interesting is that there is a community of marine science people here that is almost equal to none, because every major marine science organization has some sort of presence in the Keys. And I do a lot of work with coral restoration volunteering. And I love being around marine science people. And I sort of explain to people, if you're in tech, you go to Silicon Valley. And if you're in marine science, you come to the Keys. The Navy's here. They have a Navy base. A lot of research is going on. Moat Marine's here. Coral Restoration Foundation, who I volunteer with, is here. Florida Aquarium. There's the Keys Marine Lab is here. All the research universities, FIU, and Harbor Branch, they all have a presence here. And it's really been interesting to get plugged into that whole network of very serious marine scientists. In fact, a little bit of history here, but the Florida Keys is part of the Florida Reef, which is actually the third largest barrier reef in the world. And the largest being the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and the second one being the Mesoamerican Reef off of Mexico and Belize. But the third largest in the world is right here off our coast, and it extends from basically West Palm Beach to Key West, about 350 miles. So we have this unique ecosystem that's really unparalleled, that stretches all along our coast, with incredible sea life and an opportunity to study what's going on from a climates and marine science standpoints. There's really no comparison. So that's why I'm here.
Wow, what a story. So Sean, I was fortunate enough in the 90s. I got a skilled labor visa, so I was working in Australia. And I would make some money in one town, and then I'd piss off to another town. I'd make some money, and I'd keep doing it. So I had the opportunity in Australia in the 90s in order to do liveaboard trips. We'd go out for 2 weeks on a boat, and we'd leave out of Cairns or Cairns, however you want to pronounce it. They pronounce it Cairns. A lot of people pronounce it Cairns. It's up there in northeast Queensland, very close to Cape York, very close to Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, stuff like that. So I did some of these liveaboards, and let me tell you, they were tremendous. And it breaks my heart to remember what I saw in Australia on the Great Barrier Reef. And by the way, also, I dove the Ningaloo Reef, which is off of the other coast, at a place called Exmouth, where they had whale sharks. They have all kinds of stuff. But it breaks my heart to hear, apparently what's happening to the reefs because of everything going on with the climate and so on and so forth. So I guess my question to you is, what is the state, not from a science perspective, but just like, Joe Blow, like somebody like me, if I were to put on a tank, get in there and check it out, am I going to see a lot, or is it all getting, I don't want to say destroyed, but is it being impacted by, population growth, as well as climate, as well as chemicals and everything else? Can you kind of give us a perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm no scientist. I'm
just looking for on the street, anecdotal.
Well, I tell people I'm living my marine science fantasy down here, because I get to hang out with much smarter people than me who understand these things. And all I can say is, it's very complex, and there's a lot of different reasons for what's happening. But I think the diving is still spectacular in the Keys.
Really?
I really enjoy it. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are dedicated to preserving the reef and preserving the genetic diversity of the reef. And, certainly a lot of the dive operators and commercial fishermen, and there's just a lot of greater attention to our environment that there was, say, 20 or 30 years ago. And certainly, there's very aggressive enforcements of fishing regulations down here. I mean, I think we read every day about, people getting arrested and thrown in jail for, maxing out, going over their max on lobsters and
lobsters. I just saw an article about somebody,
yeah.
Also conchs, like queen conch or something.
Yeah, it's illegal to harvest.
Some woman got arrested.
Yeah, it's illegal to harvest queen conchs. And in fact, when I'm swimming off the beach here in Key West, I mean, I see a lot of queen conchs. This is a really good sign. We're seeing some recovery in the reef. I'm seeing, sea urchins and animal life that sort of had disappeared and is now making a comeback. So I think there is hope, and I think there's a lot of good organizations that are doing very interesting work with preserving genetic diversity of coral species and for the eventual recovery of the reef. So I'm very hopeful about what's going on. I think the diving here is still spectacular. It's still terrific. I love living down here. I think everybody's very attuned to the environments and what's going on. Of course, since I'm not a marine scientist, I really don't have an opinion on climates and various other very contentious issues. Yeah, I don't really get sucked into any of those. I'm just here to observe and help out where I can, and but I think it's still terrific place to come dive, and I would encourage everybody to do that.
Jean, before I went to Australia again, mid '90s, one of the things that was starting to break here was lionfish. They didn't really have a lot of lionfish from what I remember. And then I get to Australia and I'm seeing lionfish everywhere, and they had this reputation being so dangerous. Now I guess they figured out ways to actually fillet them, so they're actually eating their way out of the problem apparently here. But what about lionfish? What about other I don't know, species that have been added or introduced into this ecosystem? I mean, what do you see when you're down there diving?
Yeah, so lionfish has been a particular problem in the last I think 10, 15 years. They're native to Indonesia and the Pacific. They're not native to Florida, but some suspect that they were brought either through their aquarium trade or possibly in the bilge of ships that have come from Asia. And so they're not native. They're an invasive species here in Florida. And unfortunately, they've been sort of gobbling up the native species and the eggs, and they can consume massive amounts of fish. They're predators, but the one good thing is they're edible. They have venom. They have venomous spines, so you have to be very careful. But you can pull spear them and fillet them, and the fish is super tasty. It's delicious. In fact, some of the restaurants in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano serve lionfish. In fact, you could buy it at Publix.
No.
Yes, and at Whole Foods Market. In fact, at one point at the Whole Foods in Brickell, you could buy lionfish. So there are fishermen who sort of fish it commercially. I know several up towards the Pompano, West Palm area who do that, and they supply restaurants and some markets, some specialty markets, and it's really delicious fish. It's got the texture sort of a grouper, and it's just delicious. But there are, a number of invasive species that have come into Florida. I mean, the python is one, and so it's a difficult issue, and so the lionfish, we've been able to sort of manage that because the state they actually have contests, see who can kill the most lionfish, and they award prizes. Yes, the state of Florida has tournaments, and a lot of people in the Keys and up the coast cook them either to eat or catch them to eat, or just as a lionfish for tournaments and for to help clean up the reef. So yeah, lionfish are a big problem, but when you go diving these days, maybe you'll see a few. Because they're pretty well hunted now.
Wow, that's great news. So a lot of people probably don't realize, and again, I don't know who's going to see this and where they're at, but actually, so if you look at the map of Florida, you're going to have kind of at the bottom third, you'll have Lake Okeechobee. That's Palm Beach County. Then as you go south towards the tip of like the mainland, you're going to have Broward County. Then you'll have Miami-Dade County. Then all that will dump into what is that? Florida Bay? No,
Florida Bay. That's right.
Yeah, it dumps into Florida Bay, and then you got the Keys sort of hooking around there. Now, what's interesting is between Miami and Key West, at least as far as I know, Jean, and please fill in the blanks, but this is an idea if anybody's thinking about coming here for the winter. So you got Biscayne National Park, which is all underground. So on your way from Miami to Key Largo, which is the northernmost key before you ultimately end up in Key West, you got a national park where you can go snorkeling and stuff like that. Then you got another one in Key Largo, which is what, John Pennycamp Park? I don't know if that's national or
It's
state.
a state park. It's a state park.
It's a state park. You continue down, then you got Bahia Honda, right? That's a place where you can camp, and it's like one of the only places, or the best place for a beach, actually in the Keys, because a lot of the Keys doesn't have beaches. It's more like hard, right?
Right. It's coral reef, basically. You have a few beaches, Long Key State Park, and then, of course, Bahia Honda State Park, just south of Marathon, and then Key West. Yes. Marathon is sort of the halfway point. It's an island, sort of halfway between Key Largo and Key West. Key Largo to Key West is roughly 100 miles.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now, and then finally, when you get down to Key West, then you have something called Fort Jefferson.
Right.
Is there diving there, or is that just snorkeling?
There is diving. There is diving, and there are several charters that leave Key West and go diving in that area. So, yeah.
Jean, any suggestions for people, whether it's through anybody you know or whatever, any suggestions, anybody think about coming down here, maybe they want to do some scuba or they want to do some snorkeling, any like tips or any websites you can point them to help them sort of get, do their research maybe before they arrive in South Florida, especially for the winter? And do they need a wetsuit in the winter?
Yes, they do. They do need a wetsuit in the winter, but the winter doesn't last that long. Usually January to April is sort of chilly wetsuits. Right now, you don't need a wetsuit. You probably won't need a wetsuit until November, December. But then after that, you